The day passed quietly with no notable events. Madison chose to stay in the cafe, preferring its warmth to the chill outside and waiting for her boyfriend to arrive. The staff had known each other for a long time, which contributed to the cafe's accommodating atmosphere. The waiters had already left for the evening, and the cleaning lady was busy cleaning the back room, and the cafe was unusually quiet. Where could he be at this hour? Madison pondered, remembering the weeks of continuous work without rest. Every day she walked to the bright red building 500 meters from the cafe and spent hours cleaning there. She would wash other people's cars to a high shine and then go home to sleep, even though there was hardly any time to rest. In the morning, she had to help her mother get up, wash her face, make breakfast, and arrange the food she had brought from the cafe for lunch and dinner before running back to work. Sometimes there were weekends when she could rest in the afternoon or evening, and tomorrow was her only free day. Where was Jack? Madison sat at the window, waiting for the long-awaited car to appear behind the trees. But instead, two men were walking down the asphalt path past the bus stop. She looked closely. An elderly man and a boy of about 5 or 6. The grandfather was looking around without noticing anyone, looking through a garbage can for something. The boy stood nearby, shuffling from foot to foot. The sight was unbearable. Madison came out and asked what they were looking for. The man wiped his hands on the edges of his shirt, took the boy's hand, and headed back toward the road. "Hold on, please. I work at the cafe. We have leftovers. There's no one there right now. Let's go get something to eat," she shouted after them. Unsure if they were looking for food and not some metal cans or clothes, the man stopped, looked at the boy, and turned back. Madison noticed his eyes filled with tears. She led them to the office where the employees usually ate lunch and relaxed. The room had a desk, a couch, and a couple chairs. As for the food, she had embellished reality a bit because all the leftovers were in containers in her bag. She had planned to take them home and divide them into lunch and dinner as usual, but she felt sorry for those two. Besides, tomorrow was her day off, and she could cook for herself. While the unexpected guests washed their hands, Madison heated up the food in the microwave and set it on the table: rice and fish, vegetable salad, triangular slices of pizza, cheesecake, chocolate cake, and lingonberry compote. While they ate, she stood at the window in the spacious room. "Grandpa said behind her back, 'Thank you.'" "Thank you," the boy repeated cheerfully. The man looked intelligent and calm, and it was incomprehensible how he had ended up on the street with a small child. Zach's pants and clothes were wrinkled and damp from the rain, though. When asked what was wrong and what she could do to help, Grandpa answered strangely and confusingly. First he said their apartment had flooded, and then he added that their house had been destroyed and looted. Madison wrapped up the brownies she hadn't had time to take for lunch and left them for her guests. As she started to leave the room, she heard the sound of a motor outside the window. Jack had arrived at last. The strange guests said goodbye and left. The weekend went well. Madison slept well, cooked a lot of food, took a walk with her mother in the park, and went to the movies with Jack, something she hadn't done in a long time. Strangely, the movie theater audience sat thoughtful and silent as they watched the drama unfold, but Madison couldn't contain her emotions. It seemed that the accumulated feelings and worries had finally found an outlet. That evening, when her mother fell asleep, Madison lay on her bed, staring up at the ceiling, her arms and legs spread. She didn't feel like moving. She just lay there in silence, thinking about nothing, enjoying the peace. Madison's mother had been bedridden for years. She had problems with her legs that required a lot of money to fix. Because of her lack of money and connections, all she could do was lie down, take painkillers, and occasionally, with her daughter's help, get up and go for a walk, which was a lot of inconvenience and was increasingly replaced by just an open window. Madison saved money, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. The day flew by quickly and the night flew by even faster. The work week began again. Oddly enough, it started on a Saturday when most people were on vacation, and that was always a busy time at the cafe. There were not enough tables for all the guests and waiters. The beginning of the week was not an easy one, and each day brought its own troubles. At the car wash, the heat was sometimes cut off, and the morning began with an unpleasant feeling of sickness. Fall brought the first frosts that heralded the winter cold, and Madison's fall closet looked sparse. Buying new clothes would mean spending a significant portion of her savings. A few days later, Madison returned home and found her mother lying on the floor. She had accidentally tripped and was unable to get up due to severe pain. An ambulance was called, which took her to the hospital. Her worst fears were confirmed. An urgent operation was needed before the situation worsened. However, there were no quotas, and Madison had to either pay for the treatment out of her own pocket or leave it as it was. She sat on the bed with all her savings spread out in front of her and reread the amount several times, hoping that it would somehow increase. There was nowhere to wait for help. Jack had been paying off the loan his father had persuaded him to take out, promising that he would pay it off himself. But soon Jack's father disappeared. From the rare news they received, it was clear that his father's business had gone bankrupt, and Jack had to pay his debts. Madison's father had left the family long ago, when she was only 10 years old, and remarried after raising 2 children. He had faithfully sent child support until she came of age, but it would be strange to ask for help now. Madison had no other relatives except her Aunt Linda. Linda had her own difficulties. After her husband left, she had to raise 2 children alone, working tirelessly to keep the family afloat. The long hours spent in the factory had sapped her health. The exhaustion combined with the mental strain of trying to make ends meet left her feeling broken. Linda had always been there for Madison when her birth father left, but Linda's situation wasn't much better now. She was struggling with her health and was facing eviction from her small apartment due to unpaid rent. The whole family seemed to be caught in an endless cycle of hardship, where every small victory was followed by another setback. After thinking about all the possible options, even the craziest ones, Madison decided that she would go to the bank the next weekend to find out about the possibility of getting a loan. She was scared to even imagine how they would survive if she had to give up part of her paycheck every month, but there was no other option. She would decide everything else later. Right now, the most important thing was to help her mother. One evening, Madison got a call from her coworker, a waitress at the cafe, asking her to go outside to return her forgotten keys. She was walking through the yard when a large black car with tinted windows and a spectacular license plate, 550, drove by. It was clear from the look of the car that it didn't belong to the locals. Most of the transportation was old and humble, sometimes even rusty, and only a few new budget models. "Where did you come from?" Madison wondered as she glanced at the car as it passed by. On the way back, she was even more surprised. The car was parked in her driveway, and standing at the door was an elegantly dressed woman in high heels, a dark green coat with matching gloves, and a black purse over her shoulder. She looked very stylish, yet out of place against the gray, dilapidated building. Madison could smell the pleasant scent of expensive perfume throughout her walk. As she approached her door, she heard the clack of heels behind her. A stranger was standing right behind her. "Do you live here? Is your name Madison?" "Yes, that's me," Madison replied, surprised. "I came to see you. I was wondering how things worked out." "Yes, indeed. It's funny," Madison replied cautiously. The guest introduced herself as Nina. She was the mother of the same boy Madison had fed at the cafe a week ago. They hadn't eaten in 2 days and had spent the night in the middle of nowhere. "Why did this happen?" asked Madison. "My husband's father is sick. Sometimes he feels like he has an apartment, and sometimes he feels like there's something wrong with it, and he needs to leave immediately. He goes off to an unknown destination and then forgets who he is, where he came from, and where he was going. We've tried everything, but he always finds a way to escape, and the caregivers can't catch up with him for a long time. This time he went to the kindergarten and took our son. The kindergarten is new. They don't know about our situation yet, so they quietly let him go with his grandfather. How can you say that? How can you say that? Nikitka has never experienced anything like this. It's horrible. I can't imagine that he could have eaten something from the garbage cans. You just saved my motherly heart from this nightmare. How can I help you? You don't need it. The important thing is that you're feeling better, Madison said. Nina insisted and left her number, promising to work something out. As Madison expected, no one called her back, and she began to deal with her mother, figuring out where to take her, how much money to prepare, and how to help with her recovery. What was her surprise when the doctor informed her that her mother would soon be transferred without her participation to a private clinic where the operation would be performed and post-operative care would be organized. She didn't have to pay anything since everything had already been paid for, the doctor's services, lodging, and meals. Madison called Nina and thanked her for her help, as she had easily lifted a very heavy burden from their shoulders. They never saw each other again, as the precautions against Nina's family increased from that day forward. Jack finally closed the loan and decided that he would save up the money as he planned to propose to Madison and rent a separate apartment. She didn't know about it yet, though she was already very happy that everything she'd been waiting for was finally coming true.